Okay, welcome to the Otherppl Show. My name is Brad Listi, and I'm in Los Angeles. Great to be with you. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you're okay out there, wherever you happen to be. Don't forget to subscribe to this show wherever you listen. You can also subscribe on YouTube, and you can follow me on Bluesky and Instagram. I have a wonderful episode for you today. My guest is Hannah Pittard. She is a returning champion, celebrating the publication of a new novel called If You Love It, Let It Kill You. It is available from Henry Holt and Company. If You Love It, Let It Kill You is a work of autofiction. It is about the 21st century female experience. It's about family and desire and domesticity and art and relationships and the demise of old relationships and the restoration of relationships and the maintenance of relationships. The protagonist of this book is named Hannah. She is a novelist who, at the outset of the book, learns that an unflattering version of herself will appear prominently and soon in her ex-husband's debut novel. And then the story sort of unfolds from there. It's a wonderful novel, very funny and insightful. All the stuff that we have come to expect from Hannah Pittard. Again, the book is called If You Love It, Let It Kill You. And you're going to hear Hannah and I in conversation momentarily. Today's episode is brought to you by Tin House, publisher of Wanting, the acclaimed debut novel by Claire Jha. Wanting is a searing debut novel of envy, longing, and regret across 3 lives and 2 countries. It's a book that asks how far we will go for a friendship, a romance, a dream. This is a love letter to friendship, and it is a siren song that explores why, even as it destroys us, we always tend to want more. Again, the book is called Wanting by Claire Jha, available from Tin House. A reminder that I have a weekly email newsletter. I would love it if you would sign up over at bradlisti.substack.com. And also, I want to remind you that my new company, Deep Dive, will be launching very soon. The debut course from Deep Dive is called How to Write a Novel. Deep Dive is a company that makes audio courses, and the debut course is called How to Write a Novel. I am the host of the course, and it features, this course does, more than 50 hours of never-before-heard conversations with dozens of today's leading writers, including, I should add, Hannah Pittard. And in addition, Hannah will be teaching her own, like a shorter form deep dive course about autofiction. I've never said that before. I'm breaking news here on the Otherppl Show. So later on this year, there will be a shorter form course available that is taught by Hannah Pittard about autofiction. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for the launch of Deep Dive. It should be happening really soon. We're in the final stages of getting things ready for liftoff. So, I think it's time now for the main event, my conversation with Hannah Pittard. Her new novel, again, is called If You Love It, Let It Kill You. It is available from Henry Holt and Company. Hannah is the author of many novels, including Listen to Me and The Fates Will Find Their Way. She also wrote a memoir called We Are Too Many. I talked with her about that book on this show a couple of years ago, and I feel like If You Love It, Let It Kill You is, in a sense, it's a companion piece to the memoir. So, yeah, very happy to have Hannah Pittard back on this show, and I am very pleased to share our conversation with all of you right now. So, let's get to it. This is Hannah Pittard, and her new novel, one more time, is called If You Love It, Let It Kill You.
Spring 2022, I had just sort of wrapped up edits on my memoir. And for uninteresting reasons, we were late to announce the book, to get it in Publishers Marketplace. And the day that we were finally, part of it was because we were going back and forth on the title, and we didn't want to announce without having, the proper, the title that we were sticking with. On the day that we were supposed to announce, I got this email from my agent. Subject line was, "Have you seen this?" Never like a good sign, by the way. It was just so ominous that she communicates by way of subject line. But it was, "Have you seen this?" I clicked it open, and the entire text was just a screenshot of my ex-husband's debut, the announcement for his debut novel. And I read it with great interest, this synopsis. And the synopsis was essentially the plot of our divorce, his infidelity. And it even included the fact that his soon-to-be ex-wife was about to publish a work of autofiction, which I was conflating with my memoir. I thought, oh my gosh, this is insane. So obviously I read this announcement with great interest and curiosity, certain amount of annoyance. And I did something that I hadn't done in like 6 or 7 years. I Googled him. I was looking for any kind of news that I could find about this novel that I had never, I had no inkling was in the works. And I couldn't find anything about the book, but I did find a short story that he'd written and published in 2019. And in the short story, there's a person who's a lot like him. There's a woman who's a lot like me. They've gotten a divorce because he's cheated with the woman's best friend. The woman who's a lot like me is dating the chair of the English department and is helping to raise his daughter. All of this checks out with my life. And so I read this story with even greater interest than I had the announcement to the debut. And I was completely unprepared for the part where in the story, the me person gets knifed to death by a homeless man. and that was really, I got to that moment and I was like, wait, what now? And I had to reread that section. And then I reread the whole story. And I was like, son of a biscuit.
Yeah.
This guy murdered me, which I thought was hilarious, vaguely disturbing. And I started using it as a punchline immediately, told my boyfriend who was sitting across from me, I was like, guess who wrote a story about us and guess who murdered me? And, as I told people, certain people found it as amusing or not as amusing as I did. I have a friend, a poet friend who was pretty upset by it. My sister thought it was hilarious. My boyfriend was like, I don't like that. And I said, do you want to read the story? And he said, no. But that was the day that I started writing If You Love It, Let It Kill You. I didn't know that I was working on a novel, but I just thought, I'm a middle-aged, mid-list novelist who just found out that 3 years ago she was murdered and she had no idea. And I just kind of took the story and ran with it.
You started that very day.
That day. Absolutely that day. And I recently was, looking for corroboration on this because I was profiled also recently in the New York Times. And so I was making sure that my memory of the history of this book all checked out. And when I searched some of my text messages with my poet friend, I'm going to keep saying my poet friend, I mean Ada Limon, with my poet friend Flex there. And I saw that 2 days after I'd started it, I was already sending her dialogue. So that was like
you were inspired.
Yeah, that was verbatim in the novel. So yeah, it was right away that I was inspired. I was very inspired by my ex-husband.
Well, and I think that you have the sense at this point, several books into your career, to kind of recognize when you've got your hooks into something or when something's got its hooks into you and it's worth pursuing, right?
Well, we talk about the sticky, man. I recognize the sticky right away. Yeah.
So your ex-husband is the author Andrew Ewell, and the book in question is called Set for Life. That's his debut novel.
That's right.
That's the one that you read like the Publishers Marketplace synopsis of.
That's correct.
And this was at a time, just to kind of get the timeline straight, this was at a time when your memoir, We Are Too Many, was about to
It was
come
about
out?
a year from publication. So it's still, even though we'd finished it, it was about a year till publication.
Okay. And that's about
yeah.
the dissolution of your marriage and this betrayal where, I mean, we talked about that book on this show a couple years ago.
No, his novel and my memoir have the same plot.
Okay. But you guys totally didn't realize that the other was doing this until the deals were in place and the books were in the pipeline.
Almost, not quite. We had a mutual friend in common still who was an early reader for me with the memoir. And when I knew in November of 2021 that it was going to be published, like I inked the deal, we'd signed it, so I knew that it was going to be out in the world. I asked him if he wanted to be the one to tell my ex or if he thought that I should, because more than anything, I wanted to protect their friendship. And he said that given the fact that he had read the memoir and had also, helped me, not just read it, but been a quote unquote reader, he said that he wanted to be the one to tell him so that he could also acknowledge his role in the book. And so that was in November of 2021 that my ex found out that I was writing or that this memoir would be published. And then his announcement came out in March 2022. So he knew about it, but I did not know about his book.
But he was writing his book and was like already in process on it, you think, like independent of this knowledge? He didn't like write it in response to the knowledge that you had written this memoir.
No, not at all. I mean, 100%. He was definitely already working on this book. I suspect that when he found out I had a memoir coming out, that might have given him the ending. The fact that his wife he discovers that his wife is soon to publish, an auto-fictional version of their life together. So I feel like maybe the knowledge of my memoir inspired his ending. I think that he would probably say that's absolutely not true, but I also have no idea. That's just my suspicion. And it's not worth a he said, she said.
So what's interesting is the question of whether or not you guys have read. I mean, I know you said you read Andrew's short story, like after you found out he was going to be publishing this debut novel, which was about the demise of your marriage. I read I think it was the New York Times, where he said that he hadn't read your forthcoming novel and had, quote, only skimmed the memoir. I call bullshit.
Which I think
it's true.
Also, I've got to say, he says something different in the New York Magazine piece too. I don't think he's read the new book. Maybe he has or not. I think when he was interviewed for that, he hasn't read the new book because it wasn't out yet. But the memoir, I'm pretty sure in New York Magazine, he said, yeah, I read it. He and his new wife both read it. I feel like he said something along the lines of, and he recognized a lot of stuff that he, disagreed with, or didn't recognize a lot of stuff he agreed with, one or the other. And then now he's saying he skimmed it, but he disagrees with a lot. Okay,
so here's the question. First of all, did you read Set for Life?
Oh, good. No. F no. Mm-mm.
You wouldn't.
I did skim the first 27 free pages, which were made available to me by the devil that is Amazon. And so I skimmed those 27 pages. And then once in a bookstore, I did pick up his book and I looked at the end, like a classic When Harry Met Sally. I just wanted to see the ending. And I was struck by there's a sort of homage in it that he pays to, did you ever read Helping by Robert Stone?
No.
Do you know that story? It's so great. It ends like this couple has this horrible fight and probably the marriage is over, and it takes place in one amazing day into the next morning. And at the very end, the husband has lost his mind. He's gone outside. It's snowing. He has a shotgun. It's unclear if he plans to shoot the neighbors. And he turns and he looks up, and he's also started drinking after being sober for, 15, 20 years. He starts drinking again. And he looks up at his house and his wife is in the second floor window, and it ends with him holding up his hand, and we don't know if his wife responds, right? So it's we're left very much on the precipice, and his book ends with a sort of very similar gesture. And I was like, oh, cool. Nod to helping. Good for you.
And so you read just this preview. I mean, I guess I can imagine not reading it. There's a part of me that I think would be so curious and so like emotionally invested that I would kind of have to. But then again, I can imagine like reading 27 pages and just being like, okay, that's enough. Like I lived it. I don't need to read it.
I think a lot of it was that, Brad. And part of it was, so I will acknowledge, I spent a lot of time talking about and trying to decide whether or not I should read it. And for many reasons. And ultimately what I devised, my plan was this. I have a very close friend who is, and I say this with great love and admiration, as neurotic as I am and as paranoid as I am and as conspiracy prone as I am. And so I said to her, do you have any interest in reading this book and telling me if I should read it? And she said, oh, fuck yeah. So she read it, basically turned on her Hannah brain, which is not very far from her brain. And she finished it and she said, you absolutely do not need to read this book. He is, he's dismissive of your new partner and he makes fun of your body. And she said, if I were you, I would walk away from this one. And I said, awesome. Thank you. And then I did, after she told me that, that's when I realized that there were those first free pages available on Amazon. So I opened them up and I read enough to see two things. One, I got the origin of their affair. And of course, this is just their fictionalized affair, except everything checks out. Like even my former best friend's husband's like white coat, he has this white coat that he wore. So there were all of these details that's like, this is real life. This is real life. I recognize these people and these places. So I read their affair, how it starts, and I was wholly unmoved by it. I was expecting to, either feel artistic ache or personal pain, and I didn't. I was a little skeeved out. And then I got to the next section where just after they have the affair or the affair begins, he comes home to his wife, the me person, and she's just a caricature of a human being. She's in their kitchen making a smoothie, like pumping her hands like Jack LaLanne and talking to NPR. And I just thought, okay, this is not me. This is just a ridiculous person. And that was plenty. I just stopped there.
So you find out that this book is going to be written. You immediately start writing If You Love It, Let It Kill You. We forgot to add into the mix that after We Are Too Many comes out, after Set for Life, Andrew's debut novel comes out, there is like a viral New York Magazine piece that is written about all of the above. It's kind of like it's like super juicy piece about this very complicated and dramatic and kind of melodramatic situation where you're betrayed by your best friend. She has an affair with your husband. You divorce, and then you guys are both writers and you're writing about it. That's interesting. I read that with interest. I got to be honest. I think a lot of people did. But can you, I guess we'll start there. Can you just talk about how that piece came together? Because it kind of required the participation of all parties. Everybody sort of willingly participated, right?
Yeah, that's true. So I received an email through my website from an editor at New York Magazine and informing me that this piece was going to be written. And the editor was a man, the writer was a man. And I immediately got in touch with my agent and my publicist. And I said, he was asking me if I would participate. And I said, should I participate? And they wanted to see the email, and I showed them the email, and they said, well, this is happening whether or not you participate. So the answer is yes, you want to be involved because they're going to write this story whether or not you're there. So your voice might as well be heard. So I wrote back and said, yes, that I would participate. I did ask how the story came to them because I was concerned, since the writer was a man and the editor was a man, I was just concerned that it might have been also coming from his team, his editor, who was a man.
Andrew's editor.
Yeah, that's right. So I was concerned about the masculine energy going into it, but the editor at Chris Cox was really just lovely to talk to. Anytime I had a concern, he got on the phone with me, and he said that Chris Heath, who is the writer, was really nuanced, very thoughtful. I read a bunch of his pieces really quickly. It turned out I knew that I'd already read several of his pieces, and I liked his writing style, and I liked the nuance that I saw in a lot of his articles. So I said yes. I did believe going into it that only my ex and I were going to be interviewed. And so he did the interview in Charlottesville with my ex-husband first, spent, I think, about 3 days with him. And then a couple weeks later, he came to Lexington, Chris Heath did, and spent about 3 days with me. And that's a pretty bizarre, intense experience to have somebody so Chris is a really thorough writer and researcher, and he had read everything I have ever said or written. He'd listened to all of our podcasts. He'd listened to any podcast I'd done. So it's very surreal. My career goes back to about 2004, 2005. It's pretty surreal to have somebody who is asking you about things that you said 15 years ago or 20 years ago. Half the time I was like, that sounds absolutely ridiculous. I must have said it, but I don't remember. But also part of the process was he was quoting a lot to me that my ex had said about me. And that was really intense. That part was unexpected and intense. Yeah.
Okay. So he's quoting things that your ex had said in the 3 days that he had recently spent with him.
Yeah. Yeah. And so a lot of questions were, what do you have to say about this version of events? And I think this is even in the magazine, where one night I was like, well, I have an email that proves the opposite. And I think he sort of lovingly teases me in the piece where he says, like, the next morning I woke up to like, a barrage of like evidence that just to be able to say, no, that didn't happen. That's not the case. Here's where in an email, one of them says something that completely contradicts their narrative. So there was that, which was really wild. But then sort of unexpectedly, Chris ended up interviewing my former best friend and her ex-husband as well. And that part made me, I don't know, it caught me off guard. I didn't love it. They're still close, the three of them. So I was very nervous that I was being ganged up on, but there was also nothing I can do and no way to control it. And frankly, it didn't read that way to me at all. Once I read the piece, I thought that her ex-husband comes across as this really magnanimous, like awesome, open-minded guy. And they come across as a husband and wife who are clearly, I see where their allegiance is, and it's to each other as it should be.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds stressful to me. You must have been stressed. Like,
I sweated a lot, man. Yeah. I put on a lot of deodorant.
I was going to say, like, just to have to like choose your words, like this isn't an email interview where you can kind of go over things. Like you're asking, or he's asking you questions and you're trying to like respond extemporaneously about probably the most difficult time in your life, or the most emotional, like certainly the most emotionally loaded experience of your life, I have to believe, right?
It was, yes. So I went into every day of those interviews with him, and one day we met up several times. So we spent hours and hours and hours together. And every morning when I would leave the house, or, one day he came over to the house, I would say to my boyfriend, I am not going to use profanity. Like, that's all I know. I'm just definitely going to be, I can't control how sophisticated I do or don't sound, or how intelligent, because who knows, I am under a lot of stress, but the one thing I can do is not use profanity. And every night I would come home and I would say, I was so good. I didn't profane once. And then the piece came out and like F-bombs everywhere. And my boyfriend read it and he was like, Hannah, this is intense. And I said, I truly, I mean, I must swear like a sailor all the time because I thought I did really well. So that was the one thing I was struck by, that it felt to me as though all of the pull quotes for me had fucking in them, which cracked me up. But I'm trying to get better about that.
And so your ex-best friend's ex-husband, are you guys in touch? Like, you guys both got cheated on. Are you guys?
No, we're not. We and that's because of me. He's a wonderful, decent, awesome person. We stayed in touch for about the first year after the divorces, and ultimately, because he was choosing to stay in their orbit, he wanted to stay friends with them. They wanted to stay friends with him. I found that it was better for me not to hear about them, and it just felt too close a conduit. And so I just had to say, I can't do this anymore. And it was by no fault of his. It was just, a limitation of mine where I think with my therapist, I decided that it was a friendship that I had to let go, but not because of anything he'd done.
It's a huge trauma to have to process. And I think the last 2 books that you've published have been part of that for you. And I think getting therapy is probably wise. Working through it with some sort of objective third party kind of helping you see yourself or see your emotions and thoughts and all that. But my imagination goes to being the transgressor, like the people who betrayed, like the people who cheated. Man, that's a lot to carry. I don't envy people who do that and then have to now they're married and they're kind of on an island together. I can imagine they're taking refuge in each other, or something because they did this thing. And I guess some people don't have the kind of guilty conscience that I have and the post-Catholic thing. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot to carry. I don't know how you process that as the transgressor. I don't wish that on anybody. That's got to be something that sort of haunts you, right?
I hope, and this, I can imagine most of your listeners saying, crying BS when I say this, but I truly hope they're happy. I hope that it doesn't keep them up at night. I suspect it doesn't. And, I really do allow, it's been important for me to acknowledge how much I've changed over the course of my life. I think if I'd met me in graduate school, for instance, I wouldn't have liked me. I think a lot of people did meet me in graduate school and didn't like me. And I would
Why
hate
not?
for those people. I was really introverted still. And a lot of that, a lot of my shyness, I think, manifested as smug, and it was just a crippling sense of inferiority, insecurity, and that's also that's a drag to be around, right? Or it can be. I mean, I felt it was a drag to be around me, which is probably why I was so insecure. But yeah, so I think that's why.
But you've gotten to a place where you actually wish your ex-husband and your ex-best friend, you wish them well.
Of course. Absolutely. Yeah. There aren't many. I don't know that there's anybody that I really, it takes a lot of energy, right? To walk around wishing ill on people. And I'm really trying not to carry that sort of energy into middle age with me, because I feel like I need good energy to just to enjoy life. And I don't want the bad energy. I just don't need it.
Yeah, it's that's a drag on your own ability to enjoy your life if you're constantly nursing this grudge. Or it's also been a decade, and you've written 2 books about it, and you've gotten therapy. So you've worked through a lot of shit, I feel like.
I have. And I would say, I mean, just because I can't not, I would say if you love it, let it kill you, though it starts with, the springboard is my ex is writing a novel about me. I can't control how I'm going to be depicted. The book is not about the affair at all. The book is like about, middle-aged ennui, boredom, fear, lust. Yeah.
Family. That actually surprised me a little bit. I was kind of expecting more of a like psychodrama or something that involved the ex, but that really is just the beginning. That's like the starting point.
It's just the starting point. And I think a lot of people expect that from the packaging and from the way it's being discussed, which is a bummer, just because I do think that there are certain book buyers who might say, I'm exhausted. I've had enough. I don't really want to stay in this world. And I think it's a completely different world. And yeah, I feel like it's a different world.
So when you like look back at the past several years of your publishing life and this experience of, your ex and you both publishing books about your marriage, and just like maybe the relationship that you had when you were married, and you're both like young writers, like trying to kind of make your way. It's always interesting to me, people who marry, like writers who marry other writers, and the potential competition that might unfold. Like that had to be some aspect of it. Like, I'm going to write a book about this and I'm going to publish it before he publishes potentially one, and then you find out he published one and you're like, okay, now I'm going to rejoin. Like, I think this has been described in this has been articulated in some of the press about the book, is that it's like a volleying, like there's a back and forth. Do you see it that way? Did you feel a sense of like, I'm going to put this on the page first or better than he could or did?
I'm sure that there's a quote somewhere of me talking about, trying to get to the story first initially. And that's probably true. But I will say I was trying to get to this, like a story about infidelity, like that was more generically fiction. And I wrote that book. I wrote a book called Hot Stuff that didn't sell. And then I tried to write something that hewed closer to our narrative, the real narrative, as fiction. And it had no stakes and it had no oxygen, and I didn't enjoy spending time with fictionalized versions of us. I felt just like kind of weighed down by it. So I abandoned that project. And by the time I started writing the memoir, it wasn't there was no competitive bent to it. It was really just COVID was upon us. I felt isolated, and I could not control the fact that one of the things that was sort of haunting my time in isolation were these conversations that I'd had with them over the past 10 years. And so I just started writing down those conversations, and they became the memoir. And it felt like its own distinct thing. It was an accident that I moved into this memoir. And his book then came out. And again, I didn't think of If You Love It as a rejoinder. I thought of it as, this is hilarious that I've ended up working on this project as a result of being murdered by my ex. And it's really funny that something that he's done has inspired me to write what I think is like the best book of my life. So I don't know. I'm not thinking of it in any sort of competitive way, though. I absolutely loved the comparison to Billie Jean King in the New York Times.
I read that and I was like, she had to love that.
I did. As somebody who a self-described athlete, I think a lot of people would look at me and be like, you're not an athlete. But as a self-described athlete, I was like, Billie Jean King, yes. And then I got to the Nora Ephron, and I'm like, modern day Nora Ephron, yes. Like, thank you. I die happy. And then Ron Charles, did you see his review?
No.
Oh my gosh. It came out yesterday or the day before in the Washington Post. He uses my book as a rebuttal to David Brooks' latest. David Brooks said last week or the week before that, literature, he didn't say it's dead, but it's basically timid and insular. And Ron Charles uses my book as the rebuttal. And I was like, I die happy.
Yeah, this has been, I think these last two books have generated like press attention at a level that exceeds what you got for your previous books, right? I mean, you've never been profiled by the New York Times before this book.
No, sir.
Or New York Magazine. I mean, that's like as high profile as it gets. And so I got to ask, like, what that experience was like. I mean, you talked about the New York Magazine thing with what's the journalist named Chris
Heath.
Yeah, so Chris Heath,
yeah.
He shows up and interrogates you for 3 days in Lexington. And then for the publicity cycle for If You Love It, you have a New York Times like profile happen, and there's like there's a photo shoot. There's the whole thing.
The photo shoot was the most intense part, but I will say the interview was about 2 hours. It was over the phone. It was as easy and delightful as the Chris Heath 3 days were exhilarating and stressful. It was just great. Alexandra Alter was just a gracious, generous interviewer that immediately put me at ease. And I thought we had a really wonderful conversation. And then the photo shoot was very intense.
How does that work? Do they fly somebody out, or do they just have like photographers on the ground everywhere, somewhere?
So there is a photographer who is a Pulitzer Prize winning photographer, Stacey Kranitz, who lives in Tennessee. So they had her drive up from Tennessee, and we spent 3 or 4 hours together. And she is somebody that I know peripherally. So it's very interesting to have your photo taken by somebody you know. And we had a wonderful time, but I am also somebody who has been told by photographers in the past that my eyes eat the camera. Like, I'm very uneasy in front of a lens. It's easier doing things like this where I'm moving, but when I know that I'm being captured, I get very stiff. So I'm sure that I presented as a very difficult subject. But, she said, okay, we're going across to the big park and we're going to do tree pictures. And I said, Stacey, there are no trees in the book. There are no trees. and she said, nope, I've got trees in mind. And I was like, Stacey, no, please, no trees. By the end of the evening, she had me like making out with branches, I swear to God. And then at the very end of the evening, she said, well, I've brought some props. And I said, Stacey, does the New York Times know that you brought props? And she said, no.
What kind of props? What kind of props are we talking?
She brought fireworks.
Oh.
So when she said I brought fireworks, I said, Stacey, no. I just kept saying no. She was saying, Hannah, yes.
Oh, wait. So the picture of you with the smoke rising,
bomb.
That's a
smoke bomb.
Oh.
Yeah, smoke bomb. The first fireworks she pulled out, she goes, look. And it's like the size of a toaster. And I said, that's not something I'm setting off. I'm just not doing it. I don't believe in fireworks. Like, I know they exist, but they're bad for the environment. They're bad for animals. And she said, no. And she's holding up this toaster. And I was like, no, Stacey. So then she goes back and she's like, she pulls something else out that's like this big. And she's like, maybe? And I said, we can do a tester. So we light it. The thing goes off. It sprays for like 40 feet. I run away from it. And this is just a testament to like what an amazing, like her instincts versus mine, and what an amazing photographer she is versus like what a horrible subject I am. I turned away and ran, and she leaned in. Like, I turned and looked, and she's like right there with the explosion. And she said, okay, that one's going to be great. Like, let's do that one again. And I said, no. That one we're not doing again. So then she got out these sparklers that were like 4 feet long. So I said fine to the sparklers. And then she got the smoke bombs out. And by the end of it, I'm like so exhausted and so stressed out by these smoke bombs. And then that's what that picture is, like my hands and my hair. And I'm like just staring at her like, are you serious? Another smoke bomb, which they also smell really bad.
Yeah, there's like a sulfuric smell to those things, right?
It's intense.
But like, this is just because July 4th had just happened, right? I'm imagining. It's not like there's any fireworks in your book that I can recall.
No. And I said that to her, and she said, yeah. She said, but autofiction, it's kind of like you're blowing your life up, right? And I said, no. And she said, yeah. And she said, well, I have a vision. And I was like, well, you're the award-winning photographer. So ultimately, she said, just trust me. And I trusted her. And I think that she got images that people are very excited about. I would have had like, here I am in the kitchen, like chopping, know? And I told her, I was like, but the New York Times said like kitchen, chopping. And she said, is there food in the book? And I said, yeah, lots of food. I'm always cooking. I'm always in the kitchen. And she was like, nah.
I'm not somebody who loves to be photographed. I would have a hard time with that too. Like, what do I do? I'm not like performer. I'm not going to like look into the lens, and I don't know. That just seems like too much for me, but I get that you have to do it. I mean, if the New York Times wants to write a profile of you, what are you going to do? You got to do it.
No, exactly. And I did not want to, I think I'm going to use this expression correctly because that I murder a euphemism, but I did not want to look that gift horse in the mouth. I was going to be, game. So.
And what's been the response? Like, have you been able to measure it? Like these things go viral kind of when they happen. And did you feel a discernible shift?
Yeah. I mean, I think yes. Yes and no. I mean, I've gotten some interesting emails. An 80-year-old gentleman is hoping that I will help him write a thriller that I won't say the name of the thriller because it involves X-rated language. I chose not to write back to that fellow, though I do wish him luck. And I won't give away his plot because he outlined it very extensively. And it was bawdy in a way that's outside my comfort level. So I got I got a great email from a lovely man, Larry in Connecticut, who was so sorry for everything that I've been through. He and his wife bought the book. They can't wait to read it. He read the profile with great interest. And he said he knew this was a strange question to ask, but he wanted to know who made the sweater I was wearing in the photo. And I was just like, Larry, this is the best. I wrote him back right away. He wanted to buy one for his wife. So that was, who doesn't like to know that the outfit they wore was a good choice?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you're getting photographed by the New York Times, and that would drive me crazy. Like just going out, like I could be going out to dinner with like a good friend casually, and I'll get stressed out. I'm like, what do I put? Because I just wear t-shirts and shorts all day long, and I'm going to get photographed for a newspaper. I would be basically badgering my wife, being like, what do I wear? Like she would be annoyed with me. Dude.
Okay. So I spent the 2 days because it all happened really quickly, right? Like being told that I was being profiled was a Monday. The interview happened on a Thursday. That was when they told me that there'd be a photo shoot, and the photo shoot happened on Saturday. So I had 2 days basically to find out what I was going to wear to this, casual dinner with a friend, AKA being photographed in the New York Times. So I raid my closet. My boyfriend's incredibly patient with me. My sister-in-law received a lot of photographs of, me holding the camera in front of my face so you can't see me. And I'm just like different jeans, different tops. And I finally settle on, there are like 2 shirts that I feel confident and good in, and they're both white. And the photographer, Stacy, arrives and she says, what are you wearing? And I'm like, I'm wearing this. And she said, you can't wear that. It's white. It'll bleach you out since we're doing this, with natural lighting. And I said, well, but this is what I've chosen. And she said, no, go choose something that's gray or brown or blue. And by the way, it's also 95 degrees here, and we're shooting at 6:00 at night, and the sun is like pelting on me. And I was like, blue or brown or gray. And she said, yeah, just, you go find something. And I said, well, like, what should it look like? And she says, well, you know how you want to look. And I said, yes, I want to look like I'm wearing this white shirt that I'm really comfortable in, Stacy. And she was like, yeah, well, not that one.
And by the way, take this Roman candle and point it at the sky.
So like I run upstairs and I'm like, I don't own anything that's brown, and it's also hot outside. I don't want to wear brown. So I finally found like a blue tank top, which most of the photographs were in that. And then at the very end, it was so sweaty that I said, can I please go put on the white shirt now that it's dark? And she said, oh, now that it's dark, it's going to look really good with the fireworks. So I ran upstairs and put the white shirt on. That's stressful, but it was awesome. It was awesome. Like, I want to be profiled by the New York Times every day.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Right. Well, let's talk about blowing up your life. Like, I think that's an interesting idea, because when it comes to autofiction and the level of like self-disclosure that it tends to entail, like with caveats, right? There's always like there are deviations. I mean, there's a talking cat in your novel, just to give listeners some idea of the like the leeway that you're giving yourself to fictionalize. It's not like this book is like verbatim fact-based account of your life. Like, you're having fun. That's another thing that I came away from the novel like really feeling is it seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems to me like Hannah was really having fun, maybe most especially with the Hannah character, but also with like the family characters. And there's this very distinct comedic element to this novel, like darkly funny, but it feels like there's a comedic performance happening on the page, and there is an effort by you as the writer of this to kind of view yourself especially, but kind of like all of the circumstances of your life from which you're lifting material through a kind of funhouse lens. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Funhouse lens is perfect. Yes, I had such a good time writing this book. It was incredibly difficult to write, but I laughed so much. It was just a joy to allow myself to be funny, and especially to make fun of, my quote unquote self, like my persona. It was really great to, paw at her. I mean,
and like, we can just kind of give people some background. There is I think the heart of the book for me is your family, or the Hannah's family, and the relationship that she has with her parents, who split up long ago, but who now both live in Lexington near her, as does her sister. She's got a bunch of nephews, niece and nephews.
Just nephews, just a ton of them.
Yeah, just nephews everywhere. They're peeing. Yeah. They're peeing in the yard
constantly. That's all they do. In the book, that's all they do.
Yeah, but it's I loved it. And I think that the depictions of the parent characters, there's a funhouse aspect to those, and there's a level of play and a creative freedom that I have to believe can only really happen. Well, I don't want to be too definitive here. I would say, you're just like a writer who's kind of a sociopath who doesn't give a fuck about the people in her life and is just willing to say whatever she wants. I don't think that's you. I think the other scenario that's coming to mind for me is that you have like a very loving family. I think a writer who has a feeling of permission or a feeling of freedom to depict her own life and her own family members, that can only come from family members who like love and trust you and are kind of willing to go along for the ride. Is that accurate? Like,
my family, I'm so close to my family. We are like a dog pile, and
like,
yes,
geographically and like metaphorically,
emotionally,
yeah,
physically.
Yeah.
I mean, the best sleep of my life still to this day would be when my brother and sister, they're both older than I am, we'd all come home. I'd come home from boarding school. They'd come home from college, for the holidays or for the summer. And when we were all together at night, if they stayed up watching a movie and I got to sit between them, I would fall asleep within 5 minutes. And I swear to God, it is like those nights on the couch with them watching whatever movie they picked. I just slept like a baby. It was the best sleep. I just felt so safe always. And we're still we're in our 40s and some of us are in our 50s. Not me, because I'm the youngest. And we still to this day, like, our partners will say things like, we can get a hotel. And I'm like, why would we get a hotel? We could sleep on the floor at the base of their bed, and fortunately, like, our partners do win. They're like, no, if there's not a guest bedroom, we're not sharing a bed with your brother or your sister. And I'm like, well, I would. I mean, we just put a pillow right there. My sister and I, you just slap a pillow right there. We'll just, So yes, they are loving, they are kind. And as prickly as I perform in the book, I think Hannah P., who is not me, but the fictionalized version of me. Hannah P is somebody who is terrified of permanence, but craves stability. You know, she's just like a walking conundrum. You know, she wants to be, she tells herself how independent she is, but the minute she's truly alone, she doesn't know what to do. And she absolutely needs, like, I think one of the discoveries she makes by the end of the novel is that without the scaffolding of, you know, this family that she pretends to be overburdened by, without that scaffolding, she has nothing. You know, she's just sort of footloose and fancy free, like falling.
I think the way that you live in Kentucky with like your whole family, except your brother, who I think lives in Denver and is like an ultra marathoner.
That's right.
And like,
that's true.
And you've run, like, how many days in a row have you run now?
We are at 5 years, and where are we? So April 26, April to May, May to June. You guys are going to see, this is great. It's like how I do the alphabet. You know, I do crosswords with my stepdaughter and my boyfriend. And the other day it was like the letter before T, and I'm like, A, B, C, D. And they immediately say the letter. And I'm like, oh yeah, I could have done that too. S. Okay, so April to May, May to June, June to July. So we are at 5 years and 3 months on July 26th.
You've run every day
off.
Without
every
a day
day
off. Jesus.
And that is having the flu twice, COVID once, and at least one really bad hangover. There was one bad hangover in there. That was an evening run.
You throwing up while you're running?
I'm never that sick, but I was definitely sweating in a way, like I was sweating gin. I was just like, I can smell the boodles like coming off me. Like,
by the way,
bad.
When you live in Kentucky and you see somebody jogging, there's a 1 in 3 chance that they smell of gin and whiskey.
Or bourbon.
Yeah, I was going to say bourbon. It's Kentucky bourbon. But
yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, but you've got, you know, your sister there, your parents there. I think that's the way human beings should be living. I mean, unless there's like a truly like compelling reason.
A traumatic rift.
Yeah. Like if there's like abuse or something, then obviously you have to make space. But if the family is more or less like semi-functional, I think human beings are social beings. We need our unit. It's good to be close to the people that you're closest to, like geographically close, and to have that feeling of connection and support and intimacy. And I feel like maybe the forces of capitalism have scattered too many families and they lose that. And I don't think it's great for people. I've said this on the show before. So I kind of envy the fact that you're all in that town and that you all like, there's also something very distinctly Southern about your family, which I recognize coming from, my parents are both from Louisiana, and I was never a resident of the South, but I have Southern culture in my life, and my extended family is all down there. And the porch sits.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's hanging out on the porch and like having a drink, and your mom will just be like, I'm coming over with a bottle of white wine. And I'm just like, okay, this is fun. Like this is what people should be doing too. It's like
the bottle of white wine and her will. Don't forget. Once a year, she shows up, and it's not a will, it's a list of everything she owns. And I will literally like take it from her, walk into the next room, put it in the junk drawer, and be like, okay, we can have the wine. We're not doing that list of items. We're just not. It's too much.
Well, and the father character, like if I'm going to be totally like not, I guess why wouldn't I be totally honest? But I think for me, just as a reader, the relationship between Hannah and her dad is the most touching relationship in the book. And the dad character is this kind of larger than life figure, a very comedic figure, but also like a heartbreaking figure. Like this is a guy who's struggling in some ways and who's had like a big life and like many marriages. Like was it 5 or 6, I think, in the book. And so,
probably.
Yeah, and has been through a lot, but it's kind of indomitable. Like one of these people who just sort of like, I don't know, like bulldozes his way through life, and like, but yet there's a fragility and a frailty that's revealed in the book that I found very moving. And like, that must've been like both fun and I would imagine probably difficult to render as a writer. When you talk about this book being like really hard to write, I would imagine that was maybe the hardest part.
Well, it's especially hard because he's, the father is the character through which she is able to have her epiphany, right? And she's the one that he's the character that she has been holding the furthest away from her, emotionally, the furthest away. And obviously I think what I'm hoping is that he's a very clear foil, that they are the closest. They're also emotionally the closest to one another. And that's one of the reasons that she has him so sidelined. And it sneaks up on her at the very end, I think, through his fragility, but also, like you said, he's just, in my real life, my father is somebody who loves life and loves every second of life. And especially, he's 82. And I would say that his zest for living has only amplified in the last 5 years. Like, the closer he is to understanding that it's almost gone, the more he wants every second and every day to count. And I completely admire that. I absolutely love it, because I think so many people, it's very easy to live your life either in the past or thinking about promising yourself something you're going to do in the future. In the future, I'll, if I can just get out of this, like the next 6 months, like then it's going to be easy sailing. And the thing is, that's just not what life is. Like, life is an accumulation of these mosquito bite moments, like these boring days in the summer, and that's life. And so in my real life, my father is somebody who I think has reminded me how important every single hour can be, even while you're muddling your way through that particular hour. And so I wanted to pay homage to that. But yes, it's certainly part of the difficulty there is having to portray him in a manner, I think, especially, the first 75% of the book, in a manner that is almost caricatured, but there has to be a reversal. If he's somebody that she's put on a pedestal from the beginning, it just doesn't work, right? It's like, so she has to see him differently only at the end. And that's what allows her to have a reversal.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. No, it's very touching and very human. And your family, I would imagine, has read the book. What's the feedback? What are the Amazon reviews?
My brother, I think, was the first one to read it, and he thought it was great. My mother was the second one to read it. And so she and I have this kind of joke where for like the last 5 years, she's said in front of me that her favorite book I've ever written is my debut. And, I finally started telling her, please stop saying that your favorite book is something I wrote when I was 29. And she's like, but it's brilliant. And I'm like, yes, but you see, I'm 46 now. And that means that I haven't been brilliant in 17 years. And so I think it's a very like funny back and forth that we've had. And she read this book and she said she thinks it's her favorite, and perhaps she is performing that, but I don't think she is. And it made me very happy to hear it. And my father read it, and I think I got a kind of like play by play from him as he was reading it via text. And the early texts were, this is fantastic. I love the writing. You're like, I don't know how you do what you do. And then towards the middle of the book, there was some amount of, you're taking some liberties here with a man who's an awful lot like me. And my text messages in those moments, my responses were like, Dad, promise me you'll finish it. Please promise me you'll finish it. Like, I think you'll understand what I'm doing, but you have to finish it. You cannot stop. Even if it's uncomfortable, I am asking you to power through. And he did. And I think he really loved the ending. And he also, I think it's his favorite of the things that I've written. My sister is the only one that hasn't read it, but only because she's like so busy. It is not for lack of interest. And she finally has like her first like 10 days of vacation coming up that she's had. She works like so many jobs. Plus she only has 2 sons. I think in the book, like there might as well be 12, but they are within a year and a half of each other. And they are very active kids. Like they both are they just recently watched that documentary. Do you remember this from like the 90s, 94, I think, Dogtown, about the skateboarders in California?
Yeah.
Okay, so these kids, her boys are 6 and 8, and the things that they can do on a bicycle, they're so fearless. And the older one is, standing up on the seat, and like the way that he can maneuver and turn a corner. Like, well, bicycles scare me, and I know how to ride one, but I choose not to, which is something I have to tell my stepdaughter all the time. I'm like, I do know how to ride a bike.
Wait, why is this? Because you had an accident?
Yes. I had an accident, but also, so I was the youngest, and my parents went through this brutal divorce, right? And my joke with my brother and sister is like, they got everything and I got nothing. Like, they got tennis lessons, so they're both proficient at tennis. And I'm like, what? Where's the ball? And they can both like very easily ride bikes in major cities, and like they can turn corners, for instance. And I can ride a bike, but I can't really turn a corner. Like, it's so high off the ground, like I'm somebody who is meant to be on the ground. It's
a foot off the ground. What are you talking about?
It's so high. It is so high. I get up there and I'm like, woo, like my vertigo kicks in. I'm like, what? Why am I up here? So then, yes, when I was at MacDowell, in 2012, it wasn't even a turn, man. I was just going down a hill. And by the way, if you've been to MacDowell, if you've lucky enough to been to the most magical place on earth, you know that like there are no hills. Like, there's like a grade that's maybe like that. And I was going down a grade to go back to my little cabin because I'd forgotten something before dinner. And I just got on a bike, and it was the first time I'd been on a bike maybe in 10 years. And the last bike I was on had handle brakes. And so I'm on it, and I'm starting going down this hill that in my mind is like that, and it's really like this. And I'm getting faster and faster, and I'm trying to slow down, but the non-existent handle brakes aren't working. And I have completely forgotten that if you just like ride backwards, that slows it down.
Right.
I didn't know that. So as I was picking up more and more speed going down this tiny incline, I realized that I was never going to be able to stop because the road seemed to go on forever. So I deliberately crashed into this like kind of knoll to the right. And so I crashed, sprained my ankle. I had this bruise. I think I still have photos of it because I took some while I was at MacDowell, but I had this bruise that went from, my shoulder down to my butt. I'd skinned both hands. So I'd left the bike where it was, limped back up to the main cabin where dinner was happening. And I walked in, and at the time I was 20, I don't know, maybe 31, 32, but I was like a giant child. Just basically imagine me as a giant child until I was about 37, just like a 6 foot tall, like baby child. And so like I walk in, and I'm also still like very much in my insecure, like introverted phase of life when I get these like wounds on my body. And I walked in and I was like, if I'm just really calm, no one will notice that I've hurt myself. And these women who were in their 40s, mothers, these women like turned and looked at me, and they're like, Hannah, like I'm bleeding, like the skin is hanging off me. And I'm like, I'm fine. They cleaned me up, and I'm like, it's not bad, I promise. And they're just like, what happened? I'm like, well, you see, the brakes didn't work on the bike. And the rest of the time I was there for another 2 weeks. The rest of the time, nobody rode the green bike because they all believed the brakes didn't work.
I broke my knee on a bike, my kneecap a few years ago.
See?
But I'm back on it. I ride a bike in Los Angeles, which is, I think maybe like it's close to being suicidal to ride a bike.
That's the most dangerous thing you can do.
Yeah, but I'm doing it because I'm defiant, and I feel like we should be able to ride bikes. I feel like my whole theory of the case is that if nobody gets out on a bike in this city, then nobody's going to ever think that it's possible to be a biking city. And so you just sort of have to be, I have to take one for the team. I'm a martyr for the cause.
Have you been back to New York City since COVID?
No. But I used to, I've ridden like city bikes I remember doing that. I went for a great bike ride in New York on a city bike.
That place is bike friendly now. It is overrun with bikes, which does not make it Hannah friendly at all. But it's a really surreal experience the first time you go back, having not been there since they've actually changed what the streets look like and the lanes to make them more bike friendly. You cannot cross a road without looking for a bicycle. I'm sure there are New Yorkers like going to listen to this and they're like rolling their eyes at, the country bumpkin who lives in Kentucky. But like, it's not that I live in Kentucky. It is that bikes terrify me.
That's fascinating.
So please, like, roll your eyes at the right thing.
I mean, there's a lot of things to be terrified of, Hannah. Bicycles are at the top of your list.
They're so scary. I know.
They're so high off the ground.
I think like the last time I went for a bike ride with my stepdaughter and my boyfriend, she was probably like 9 or 10. And I ended up like kind of falling, but they didn't see. I was behind them and my boyfriend circled back and I was like, she's going so fast. And, and she like circled back around. I like see her do this super tight circle, like no-handed, like turning back around. And I'm just like, and now she's showing off. She like wheels up to me, like hands up here. And she's like, Hannah, you can do it. You can do it. You're going to be great. And I'm like, I love you. This is the last bike ride for me. Like, it's just, your joy is my pain.
So speaking of anxiety, fear, like debilitating fear.
Yeah.
This book, I think, has at its core like anxiety around aging and death and loss, and maybe a particular kind of female anxiety with regard to these things. Like there's even a line in the book about the Hannah characters, like fear of like aging and becoming like, what is it? The age of invisibility or something?
Invisible.
Yeah, like
invisibility.
Which I think is well documented. Women often, I think, feel like this, like past a certain age, the culture is sort of telling you that like you're not going to be looked at anymore or seen in a certain way. I think this is a mythology. I don't think it's necessarily true, but it can feel that way.
It can feel that way. I think you're right. But for me also, one of the things that I wanted to try to work out on the page with this book, I've alluded to, I think I've done more than just allude to it, but like like how introverted and insecure I was for a large bulk of my life. And so I was somebody who didn't want anybody to look at me for most of my life, until on the other side of my marriage, I kind of found this peace and comfort and, a personal contentment. And it was only then that I really felt comfortable in my body and comfortable being seen. And it's a funny thing to have happen when you're about to turn 40. And then I turned 40, and then, 40, 41, 42, all feel about the same. And I think it was 43 or 44 where I was like, oh, okay, so the skin is going to change, and the things that a muscle can do are different now. So I have this kind of rush similar to what my father might be feeling at 82, this rush to make sure that I don't let the next 40 years slip through my fingers. And I wanted to try to imbue some of that anxiety. I wanted to imbue Hannah P with some of that anxiety. Like there's been a wasted amount of time, but let's not spend time thinking about how much you've wasted, because then you're just wasting this time thinking about it. You just have to decide to make the change.
Yeah. And I think like there could be people on the outside looking in, reading the book and reading the profile and like taking in all that you've been up to over these past few years as a writer. And there's a certain fearlessness that I think you have to write a book like this. And yet all we're talking about here is all of your fears. It's like, it's walking that line, right? I guess like in real life, like IRL, anxiety is more pronounced and problematic and obstructive, right? But when you're in the privacy of your little writer's nook, I think it's in the attic of your home. I've talked to you from here multiple times. It looks lovely.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But up there, it's that, that's a place where you kind of can be fearless. You've kind of learned how to turn off the anxiety brain, or at least ignore it so that you can get this work done, right?
I think that's right. I mean, I think there's a kind of freedom that comes with not having had a tremendous amount of success as a writer, and there are a couple of things that have afforded me a kind of freedom from anxiety at this stage in my career. And one of them is that I am a tenured faculty member. And that's a ton of freedom right there, that emotional freedom and mental freedom and creative freedom, because, technically you have a job for life. I mean, that's like in scare quotes now, like scary scare quotes now. But having that full-time job, having the comfort of knowing that I'm sort of buffered in that way, you get to write the book that you want to write. And I think that there have been books that I've written where I felt the pressure of maybe a particular editor or of trying to make something that would be successful. And with this book, I just wanted to write the book I wanted to write. And I wanted to do it for me. And, I think you called it's kind of like a comedy act. And I think that's right. Like, I think of this book as a performance piece in many ways. And I am performing what it is to be, just a drop in the bucket, but I'm dramatizing ordinary life. And for me, that's very exciting.
Yeah. It's fun to read, and it's a lovable cast of characters. And I guess like the place to wrap up is by asking like, what's next? Are you done? I feel like you're done writing about your marriage, like the ex and the last marriage and the implosion and the betrayal. Like that's all behind you now. You don't think there's going to be another book, unless I guess your ex writes some sort of book.
Well, and he's have at it, man. I don't think he wants to, but sure, go to town. I think that would only help sell books, right? That's the mercenary side of me. But no, I am not interested in pursuing this. I've done what I can do with it. But that doesn't mean I'm saying, and so they must stop as well. Yeah, I don't care. Like it's their journey. I'm on mine. But I will say I am open to, and perhaps I'm talking about working on some stuff that would be for the screen, that would not be these characters, but it would be exploring a lot of like the themes that these last couple books have been exploring, artistic license and who gets ownership of a story and infidelity, but it wouldn't be Hannah and Trish and Patrick and George. It would be new characters.
Is that in the works?
But nothing is inked. It's Hollywood, man.
Yeah.
Like Hollywood's like a puppy that you just brought home. And I say this with great respect, admiration, and hope that there is something to sign one day. But my feeling has always been, it's like the tennis ball comes by and the puppy's like, that's the best tennis ball in the world. And then a different tennis ball comes by and they've forgotten about the first tennis ball. I do not, I'm going to try to get this one. I do not count my chickens before they hatch when it comes to Hollywood. But I am working on a novel. In the meantime, I've got a novel that is completely different. It's a thriller because that's all I like to read now. So, and I don't think that I have any business writing a thriller, but I do enjoy, and I think we've talked about this, I totally enjoy pushing myself and trying, I won't ride a bike, but I will do uncomfortable things as a writer and try to make myself uncomfortable and push myself to do new things.
Well, I feel like the character in this thriller needs to get on a bike at some point. There needs to be a bike chase, I feel like.
A moped, even scarier.
Or like one of those bikes that truly is like with the huge, big front tire. So it really is like high off the ground, in an authentic way, not like a foot.
That's basically like being in an airplane. Okay.
Yeah.
That is just like, that's up at 20,000 feet.
You're like hang gliding or something on one of those things. But I do want, before we part company, I want listeners to know that Hannah, throughout the entire course of this interview, has been clutching sparklers and Roman candles. It's a first on the podcast. There are smoke bombs. I think you lit a smoke bomb towards the back half of the interview. So her room is filled with
I'm surprised
smoke.
You couldn't hear it.
Yeah,
it's silent but deadly.
It's a directional microphone. It doesn't capture all of the ambient noise, but always a delight to talk with you. Congratulations on If You Love It, Let It Kill You. And best of luck with this Hollywood stuff and with the literary thriller that is in the works.
Thank you, Brad. I appreciate it.
Okay, there we have it. That was my conversation with Hannah Pittard, author of the new novel, If You Love It, Let It Kill You, available from Henry Holt and Company. You can find out more about Hannah and her books at hannahpittard.com. Follow her on Instagram and read her stuff. She's great. Again, the new book is called If You Love It, Let It Kill You. It's out there now. It's waiting for you. Go get your copy immediately. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen. Hit the subscribe button. And you can also subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on social media. I'm on Bluesky and Instagram. If you want to get my newsletter delivered to your inbox once a week, you can sign up for it over at bradlisti.substack.com. If you love this show, if you appreciate the work that I do, if it brings something to your existence that you feel is beneficial, I hope you will support this show over on Patreon, patreon.com/otherpplpod. Help keep this show going into the future. If you want to join my book club or get an Other People t-shirt or a sweatshirt, you can do those things over at the show's official website, otherppl.com. If you want to join the waitlist for How to Write a Novel, the debut audio course from my new company, Deep Dive, you can join the waitlist at www.deepdive.audio. Once again, Deep Dive is going to be launching really soon. How to Write a Novel will be available soon. So stay tuned. I'll be keeping you posted here on the program. Last but not least, if you have 2 minutes and you want to do me a quick favor, please give this show a rating wherever you listen. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it is, rate the show, write a little review if that's an option. It helps the show find new listeners. Otherwise, I think we're just ready now. We're just getting into the ready position as we await a new episode of Brad and Mira for The Culture on Thursday. Brad and Mira for The Culture is this podcast's weekly pop culture assessment. I will be joined, as always, by my friend and co-host, Mira Gonzalez. Brad and Mira is a change of pace. It's a hangout show. It is irreverent. It is a show that is resolutely unserious. It's meant to be a break from all of the terrible news of the world that seems to be coming at us constantly in a nonstop barrage. So if that sounds good, it's the kind of show you can listen to while you drive or while you're doing the dishes, while you're on the treadmill, whatever it is. Brad and Mira for The Culture coming up on Thursday.